Shall we get started? Okay. Well, good afternoon, everyone. Anyway, all that's left. But I'm pleased you all stayed for me, by the way. My name is Wim Buurters from OCPSummit19. We've had a number of talks already today about immersive compute. My talk is a bit different, I hope. Also because of my background, I'm not an engineer as such. I've spent quite some time in steel making and have been deeply engaged in energy and massive energy consumption. Last 10 years, I worked with an engineering company designing data centers, not as an engineer, but let's say leading a business unit. And since half a year, I'm with OCPSummit19. And the reason for doing so is about energy, so that's the focal theme of my presentation. When you look at what we did so far, which is quite an achievement when you take into account the time we are, let's say, professional in this business, maybe some 20 years. We focused for many years on PUE, and we defined it as a unique quantity already. And it has been for many years the measuring point to measure data centers. I would say, and you may disagree or not, but I think with technology available to perform well below 2 and close to 1.1, not everywhere, but at many places. And what you also see today is there's an impact of society on things that are allowed or not. It's not only technology, environment is playing a role, and if there will be something built, yes or no, and what. So there's politics and pressure of society. And for those who were not up to speed on PUE, it's below there, is the total energy of the facility divided by the pure IT part. So this is what the total community has done over the years. Let's say if I would plot past practice, this, by the way, is energy consumption split down in IT, which is the 100% level more or less. Part of which is onboard cooling, of course. Then the red is losses on power. And the blue one is the cooling infrastructure. What you see, you go down from past on a PUE of 1.75 to 1.25 maybe, with OCP making things simpler and more energy efficient, go in the direction of 1. And of course the big challenge is what to do after that. There's a lot of heat generated by a facility. It has value. It's not the biggest value, but it has value. But also for society, it has value and impact on decision making. So what am I going to do with that? Okay, happy it's back again. What we all see is the business is growing like hell. It's steady over tens of years with a 10% or more. You find all kind of numbers, but it's roughly in this area. This industry is a major player in energy consumption globally, which by the biggest part is still fossil fuel powered. You know there was a very courageous attempt last year in Poland to make an agreement on let's say, changing climate change, which is quite difficult. But I think we as a business taking maybe 5 or 6% of the energy production over the complete globe, it's up to us as well to take the initiative apart from the, let's say, the leaders or the political leaders. So what do we need to do? It has something to do with reuse of energy. And I know it has been discussed many times in the past, but I think I convince you that it's a real thing to be done. It's not yet defined, but some people say the energy reuse efficiency is something, it's a bit like PUE, but you may correct for the power that you reuse. That means the more you reuse, the lower the ERE is, which sounds a bit strange, but nevertheless, there's value in doing things like this. Then when you look at the data center facility and what I think we should realize more and more, it is something to do with IT, with heat. People say it's waste heat, but we'd rather say it's excess heat. Electricity, also carbon dioxide, if not from the generators from the power plant that is fueling the data center. And there's also something on energy storage, be it batteries or be it heat maybe. So if you take the data center as a focal point, there are at least 2 value streams going through your facilities. It's the IT value stream, which is green, and something with energy that's red. And we need to cleverly combine them and do something good with that. What I think we need to do is combine these in space and time. It sounds a bit scientific, but it's not meant like that. This is a a picture we shared as our spearheaders, but also on behalf of, let's say, the community, to a major energy supplier. And we said, if you look at what's happening, you have some companies have heat supplied to private persons, to offices. That same company may supply electricity to data centers. So what you see these days is that you have at least two streams. And if you have, let's say for the case of the example, a data center of 1 megawatts, you may need to supply 1.3 or so. And if you have an office block, you may need close to 1 megawatt on average to heat the houses. So for this situation, which is what I say current state, you need 2.3 megawatts total power. Would it be nice if in some point in the future we could do it like this? That means take the excess heat and somehow be able to use that for a second purpose, a second part in life. What you'll notice that the 2.3 megawatts for the, let's say, current situation goes down to 1. That means we halve the energy that's needed for this future situation. Of course, this is not easy, otherwise it would have been done already. But if we would do something like this, we have at least combined and that's because that's part of the job, the heat generation at the location where you need to have it, because unlike IT, you cannot transport heat too far. That means you need to generate it where you need it. If you take it a step beyond, and you want to combine it in space and time, there's something like storage. We all know that there's something to be stored on the electrical side. You need to buffer against things that change, if you like it or not. But at the same time, you will notice that if you are supplying heat to a third party, you need some storage because of seasons, because of day and night maybe. So this is not an easy job. Certainly not because the biggest part of this community is only in this, maybe, I think it works. This is my pointer. We work over there, but there's a lot around us that will give their influence on our business. And we can on the one hand say, well, it doesn't happen. I bet you it will happen. So in this case, you talk about utility supply management and control. That means you need to involve the energy suppliers, clever guys that have the data of the energy production, energy consumption, temperatures, forecast of the weather and things like that to make it really clever. That means companies the likes of Siemens or IBM are quite interested in that part, and the energy companies as well. So this is a nice challenge. It's not easy, but I think this community should think on, if we go this way, how to do that. Since I'm European, I just have some European examples. But what's happening in, well, I think you know it all, in Scandinavia, there's a number of initiatives to reuse heat from data center facilities. I think we all know that practice is a bit worse than they say, but nevertheless, the direction has been chosen. Specific for the Netherlands, but it will spread, I think. There's a transition from heating, changing from gas to something else. In Europe and beyond, thermal energy storage in the soil and in the ground, it's mature and common practice. If you didn't know that, only in the Netherlands there's more than a few hundreds of these sources drilled for storage. So it's not a big deal, but you need to think about it. There are also initiatives on large-scale electrical buffering, to buffer on the one hand side the data center facility, but on the supply side to give some peak shaving to the utility company. It's a strange thing because you sell your asset twice, but nevertheless it's intriguing to see, can it work? Another one I like very much, it's a French company that have a business where they sell compute to clients and heat to other people, and they put the compute at private people, and there we have two businesses running at the same time, connected by technology, but split from each other. So that's a small-scale example of using and seeing value in waste heat. And I think our challenge is to do it at a large scale. I saw an article on Volkswagen in Germany who is, let's say, using excess heat from his facility on a still moderate level to give to neighboring people in the area. I think bottom line, working in a good way on waste heat will be a license to operate. In the Netherlands, there's a limit on PUE to get a building permit. And also on waste heat disposal, there's a limit in Frankfurt, for instance, to be allowed to build a data center, otherwise you get taxed. I know tax is not popular in every country, also not in Europe, but this will happen. And you can either ignore it or anticipate on it. So who are the companies involved in all of this? And what do you need to organize? Or which parts do you need to get together to get it done? And this is in alphabetical order just to take any questions out. It's consumers of CO2, and that's, let's say, how it started at some facilities where they found out they need CO2 for greenhouses. When you have CO2, you have heat, that's also nice, but also some electricity. What to do with the electricity? Consumers of heat, that's a lot of it, it's basically all of us and industry as well. And then in the data center domain, it's the operators stroke owners, but also designers and users. Government will play their role on a local scale, urban planners and developers, but also the utility providers. So the game, it's a big game. And that's why I chose to have this story here, because you need to tell this story a few times before it lands. I'm not the first one giving this story. Maybe a bit longer, a bit more explicit, maybe a bit more up to date. It will happen. And some companies do see that. I mean, this is the companies we, as I should say, as Aspirators now involved with to get this done. So it's a mix of energy companies, wannabe energy companies, ourselves, planners, real estate owners. They all see that things will change and are having long-term plans on how to do that, what does it mean for the facility. The good news is that when you look at the internet, and it's not all true what you see over there, but quite some is, of course, all hyperscalers use the word liquid, and all of them have somehow plans to get it done. So that's not strange. I think it's up to us to see the bigger scene and get it done. If I go back again to the data center facility as such, what you see is you need to think about liquid, but I always say most data centers have liquid. The only question is how far is it from the IT? Let's say it's quite remote in the conventional crack unit cool data centers, where you just have a remote water system, of course. But going from top to down, it's getting closer and closer to your IT. It's also the trend you see. We try to bring it more to the IT because IT is getting hotter and we need to be more efficient. So that's a change I see. These days, we still have adiabatic dry-cool combinations. What you also see, I also heard it today and yesterday as well, also in California, water is an issue. So it's not quite favorable to be fond on adiabatic because there's a limit to that. Chillers will be phased out, I think. So you need to think about, and then within the facility and outside, how about liquid, how to do that. You can do it on a project basis, it can be policy driven, but bottom line, that's also what we always say as Aspirators, there needs to be a sound business case behind it. Be it via taxes or something else, but there needs to be money, bottom line, to conclude. Does it make sense, yes or no? Of course, from a technology perspective, there are quite some technologies available, heat pumps, thoughts about clever heat grids and temperature chaining. I'll tell a few things on that, but not too much. Let's say what people call Generation 4 heat grids are clever grids that go into low temperature, that integrate, let's say, waste heat and renewable heat and see how you can use that on a local scale. It's about really thinking ahead and thinking in time and space about heat. This needs to go live and get attention, but as well as the hard part in the facility. And what I've quoted here are liquid temperatures in conventional systems, indirect liquid to chips, liquid cooling, let's say rear cooling, the direct liquid to chip, or as Aspirators and others do, complete immersed. What you see, you have ranges of liquid water temperatures going out that you could use. And on the top part, you see what we today call typical. On the bottom line is what we see as extreme, but the extreme of today will be typical of tomorrow. So we should think about how to use this technology we've all developed already in future facilities. And that can be done by thinking cleverly, can I combine technology? Because it's asked for a simple example, not all storage can be immersed. Storage doesn't give a lot of heat, so there's no need to make a big fuss about storage and cooling. So just take a simple door heat exchanger for a rack and cool your storage. And by the way, the door will also cool the more or less cool white space as well, apart from the water part. So what you could do is think about cleverly combining technologies and let's say, and ramping up the temperature from pretty cold in to pretty high out. And just to trigger your mind a bit with what you could do, this is a imaginary white space with on the left-hand side rear coolers, on the internal parts directly to chip, and on the right-hand side another combination. And what you see, you go up in temperature from left to right. We have a client at the moment who's combining 3 technologies in a single facility also to show it can be done, it works. You need to do some thinking, but I think that's what we're here for, to do the thinking and come to the clever solutions. And by the way, what you do by combining cleverly, you stay at a low water volume instead of having masses of rather cold water floating around. This is far more pumping efficiency as well, of course. So what do we need to be done? And I'm wrapping up more or less. I think we need to focus on external heat consumption. It means cooling is not part anymore of a facility. Cooling will be done by someone else. But at the same time, it means you need to have a kind of a guarantee that they will cool, because you give to someone else what has been and still is a key part of your facility, the cooling. Not popular, but it happens. Government will take their action, as they do already now in some places. So they need to give incentives, I would say, to guide and to steer technology in the direction we all need to go to in the end. I think they should stimulate industry as well. There was a nice article yesterday about a big French initiative on a data center facility, a big one where the waste heat will be used for drying vegetables in the same area. It's a nice way of thinking, nice project example, but it could be the first of many, of course. I think in general we should have more heating networks, certainly where, let's say, on a standard basis heat is needed. Preferably at low temperatures, because that will help all of us. A high temperature is very nice, of course. For sure, having a long-term view, that means TCO and not just look at the investment. CapEx, very nice, but CapEx is many times misleading, more or less. PUE is nice, use it, but it's not the only thing to look at, I would say. And the other part is when you really dig into it, and when the clever guys do, when PUE is of interest, of importance, you can play with it and have a very good PUE, but a lousy performance. That means a very inefficient facility. And that's why we need to be open and clear on what makes sense for us as a business. Because as said, we use 5% of the energy already, and growing. So finally, for all of us, I would say, I'm not being dramatic on this, but time is running out. Many things were happening. Government is changing as well, and is taking reactions. So let's hurry. I think we're on a good way to standardize via OCP. But I think at the same time, we here should set the standards also for something that is still quite fake. We did it already for ERE, but now I think we should say something about when you have liquid cooling, give your preference on water temperature levels and so on. Make some steering to guide us in the right direction. The positive part of the message is, of course, we have all the skills and knowledge. It's not rocket science. It's all there. It's a matter of cleverly combining. Nowadays, I say the challenges we have are nice and good, that we know them, but we are not organized as companies to tackle them. We always need some kind of partnerships, and that's not always easy, but it will be done. So bottom line, it's not as much as what's in the facility, but also by and large what's around it, and that will be our business. Thank you. Questions? Yeah.
It's released into the atmosphere. To what extent is that an issue with global warming matters?
I like the question, because in the end, all heat will in the end come out. But the point is, if you blow it into the air, It replaces other heat. Let's say it could replace other heat that then still has a carbon footprint. But in the end, what you use in your house, in the end, it goes out as well. So I think it's the clever way of using, if you can, many times energy. And we can do it in a clever way by first use the electricity, and then use the heat. That's twice the carbon, twice the use of the same carbon footprint. If that answers your question.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
A big part that you highlighted, I think correctly, was the municipalities. How do they get aligned and prepared to receive waste heat? And I was pleasantly surprised once I talked to Green IT Amsterdam,
Yeah.
who was kind of doing, like, what organizations globally do you see that are trying to educate and influence these municipalities or utilities to receive hot water?
Well, the correct answer is yes, maybe. To be honest, I don't know. When I see the struggle they had in Poland, which is, let's say, on a bit higher level to agree on guidelines, it's difficult. We do it on a very specific level, but we also part of that. I think it needs to be attacked from multiple angles. And when I see, speaking for Europe, how difficult it is to get aligned on any topic, it will be a big struggle. So I think it would be courageous of us as a market segment to do it like that. And of course, there's a global demand on change of carbon footprint. And it would be really nice if somehow out of this, there could be a signal how we take it up as a business. Sorry.
Very nice summary of interesting ideas on how to reduce or reuse heat. A great opportunity, I think the greatest opportunity in saving energy in data centers is IT efficiencies.
Yeah.
And you've not gotten there yet. You made some suggestions there. Wouldn't that be a very valuable contribution to your program to make it more holistic, to save more energy?
It is. But the point is, it's not my personal domain, nor of our company. But I agree with you. Let's say it's the 100%. And if you can take that down and say, okay, we need less for that, you have more freedom to use the electricity you still have left. So IT efficiency is always a good point, always. But maybe I stepped over it because it's a no-brainer, not being offensive to you. But of course we should.
Yeah.
Of course.
To that point, you probably know the Green Grid had struggled for years to try to figure out what might be the right metrics for IT performance.
Yeah.
Is it, throughput for networking, storage efficiency, and then processing efficiency. The best they did, they do have a white paper on being able to measure the capacity of your IT performance per power. No thresholds on what's good or bad, but they do have a way to, at least a standard on how to measure it.
I remember that. That's sort of in measuring your improvements in your own facility IT operations, over a certain amount of time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The greatest opportunities are going to come as IT improves its efficiencies just because of the technologies we're using, the software you're using, the hardware we're using.
Yeah. I fully agree with you. But that's... So I would say, please carry on doing so. Yeah.
You had 65 degrees Celsius as
Yeah.
the extreme
Yeah.
there. Have you done any testing, like longer term, with electronics and exposure to high temperature?
Usually that's part of our certification process to ensure it works at those temperatures. To be honest, I don't know how long we had the 65 degrees. But I'm pretty sure, given developments on chips and the cleverness of cooling, of heat sinks on them, that we'll be able to lift them a bit. Yeah. For instance, at the moment we work also with vapor chambers on the chips to keep them cool and just take it quickly out and then with the liquid take it further on. So I think we can. And I'm also, let's say, I have quite some working experience, and I know that many times what's the max today is typical tomorrow. So I'm quite optimistic on that. Yeah. Yes, please.
Do you know what methods they want to use in measuring the heat that's generated that's provided to? I mean, I could almost see it like natural gas, right? You have a meter. How do you do that for heat?
I can only speak for my country where we do it like that, and that's defined like flow and temperature. So that's what you get. But what you see of it there, but that's also a bit of politics. There's a debate because you pay the consumption, but then the consumption is part of the infrastructure as well. And you cannot, if your house has been built for, let's say, district heating, you cannot do something else. So you are bound to a single supplier. And people don't feel comfortable with that. But back to your question, it's a temperature times volume more or less, and then expressed into money. Yeah. Okay. Thank you all.